at how exactly folks are brought to Jesus Christ. I want us to look at how we might do what we just heard Doug read that Philip did, bring someone to the Lord, and how we might invite people like Philip did to simply come and see. Now, I realize that we are in transition as a church plant. The come and see is hard because we don't really have a settled place as far as the church. I realize that there are a lot of challenges that we might face with this, but I also realize that that's a central part of God's call on our life. I want us as a new church to look closely at this and ask how can we better help folks discover why the good news really is good news. I know the phrase, I know the term, but why is it good news? And discover how anyone would want to do what we're doing right now. And how anyone would want to plant a church as if our lives aren't full, our lives aren't rich, and our lives are not filled with challenge. This afternoon, I want to apply sort of the theme of everything we heard in the first two lessons, whether it was Paul trying to encourage and bolster Timothy to preach the word and in season and out be focused and to do the work of an evangelist and that type of thing, or whether it was the story here with Philip bringing a friend to come and see who in the world Jesus is. I want to develop the theme that we see in the lessons, that we hear in the music. I know we often don't think about the connection between music and words and lessons and theme, but I do, and I think it's important in our worship to see how there's a thread that runs through all of this, and we begin to apply it to our circumstances and how it all fits together. Even the opening collect, which I stood up here and prayed a minute ago, which was a collect basically that we might have the grace and the power of the Spirit to bring those who do not know Jesus to the love and knowledge of Jesus. So all of this fits together. So I want to talk about evangelism. And I want to talk about mission. I want to talk about how we can better reach out to those around us and draw them into the dance, as C.S. Lewis would call it. This is, after all, the Great Commission. It's the command we get as our Lord prepared to move out of this dimension of life at the ascension. And he gave us that Great Commission, said, these are your marching orders. This is what I want you to do. And this is also the reason that we would plant a church, that we would be a lighthouse, or we would be a site, or we would be a community, or we would be a people that are focused on this, on our instruments of this, and our tools in the Lord's hands to make this all happen. I want to look at how our church can better help people discover the good news. They've heard the phrases, they've heard the terms, they certainly know the name Jesus, but discover really the good news. I want to do this by telling several little stories or drawing several little illustrations that all seem to hammer away at the same thing. The first, of course, would be the gospel lesson that we just heard. And here you have Jesus, since it's the first chapter of John, returning from his own baptism down at the Jordan, baptized by John the Baptist, back to his own home territory, way up north in Galilee by the Sea of Galilee. And once he got back to Galilee, Jesus found Philip and said, come, follow me. And son of a gun, he did it. He dropped it and headed with Jesus, but he went another step. It was not just he had sort of sensed that he'd found connection with Jesus and Jesus' connection with the Father. He took the next step and said, I got to tell some folks. I need to share a little of this with someone else. So he found a buddy of his, a guy named Nathaniel, which is also usually understood to be Bartholomew in the list of the apostles. And he told him, I'm telling you, you've got to come and see. There's something really big that's happening in our midst. Way up here in Hooterville, Galilee, which is what it was. They were off in a no man's land, and something really exciting was happening there. To get the background here, it might help to know that if you've ever seen a map of the Holy Land or been there, the Sea of Galilee is up in the north of the area, and it's in, of course, Galilee. And Philip and Peter and Andrew, Peter and Andrew, you'll remember, were brothers. They all lived in Bethsaida, which is right there on the coast, right there at the sea. And Jesus, of course, was a little bit west, maybe 10 miles, and from Nazareth. And then you have Nathanael, who was in nearby Cana, over there west, and about 7 or 8 miles apart from where Nazareth is. Now, when you put human beings, be the way human beings are, when you put two little Hooterville towns that are real close to each other, like Cana and Nazareth, 7 or 8 miles apart, rivalries bubble up. And those rivalries are things we understand if you watch weekend football. I don't know what it is about the fact that Clemson does not always embrace USC, and USC does not always embrace Clemson. In fact, USC sometimes doesn't even like you if you went to Clemson, and vice versa. So how these things happen, I don't know, but they're a part of the human experience. And so you have this Cana, and you have this Nazareth. Jesus is from Nazareth, and of course, Philip is from Cana. And when he hears that, when Nathanael hears that there's somebody you need to hear and see and meet and connect with from Nazareth, he understandably, with a little bit of rivalry, says, can anything good come from Nazareth? That comment had some history, is what I'm saying. But the point is, what you see here is a friend telling a friend to come and see. What you see is using personal influence and personal connection to draw someone that's not connected to come and see. And it was effective. And I believe that every single one of us in this new church plant can do that kind of thing. Not weird stuff, not strange stuff, not scary stuff. Just one beggar telling another beggar where to get bread. One friend telling another friend what's really going on. And it's friend-to-friend evangelism. And I, of course, would love to see us implement that. That's the first story here. But then I want to move to another kind of story about C.S. Lewis, because C.S. Lewis was also influenced by this friend telling a friend, and that's what drew him into the dance. He was drawn into the Christian life from being an absolute atheist, largely by relentless conversations with the likes of R.R. Tolkien, who wrote The Hobbit and all that kind of thing. Debating, discussing, drinking beer, smoking cigars, the kinds of things that I think are so healthy. And he enjoyed the conversation, and it was vigorous and rigorous, and it helped him to really think through what exactly is this Christian thing, because otherwise, we wouldn't call it R.R., but you are an otherwise normal person. You are a scholar and an author. And what is this? And through the process of a friend telling a friend, in effect, come and see, Lewis was drawn into a deeper and deeper exploration. The Hound of Heaven would not let go of C.S. Lewis, and he became a Christian himself. Well, this month is the 50th anniversary of the death of C.S. Lewis. Nobody would remember that because he died on the same day that JFK was assassinated in Dallas. And so that makes all the news. C.S. Lewis quietly slipped away. He had a huge imprint and impact on a lot of people. And so this month, on the exact day of his death, November 22nd, he will be included in Westminster Abbey with all of the giants that are included there. You know, if you've been to England, that at Westminster Abbey, you've got all the kings and all the queens and all the artists and musicians and poets and writers and giants. They're all sort of there at Westminster Abbey. I think that's interesting, for we call ourselves the Abbey. And I think it's important to look at that a second. Westminster Abbey is, in fact, an abbey. It is not cloistered. It's not secluded. It is an abbey. It's also not a monastery. So you don't see monks and nuns walking around, but they call themselves an abbey. In fact, it's Westminster Abbey. It is a church. It is a site for ministry. And it's a destination point for a lot of people that either move to England or just come to visit England. It's a destination point for people that might just come and see and check out what's going on. Anyway, the south transept of the Abbey, Westminster Abbey, is a site for this vast collection of plaques and statues and, engraved flagstones of various kinds. It's kind of a huddle area. It's a place where the giants are buried or commemorated. You have Chaucer there, you have Charles Dickens there, you have people like Alfred Lloyd Tennyson there, you have George Frederick Handel. You go on and on and on. My point would simply be that this month, in a couple of weeks, C.S. Lewis is going to be added to the crowd, a representation of him, not his physical body. And it will be done 50 years to the day of his death. Well, his discovery, Lewis's final discovery of what's the good news about the good news, had this enormous imprint and impact on Christians and non-Christians around the world. His discovery of the gospel changed millions of people. He wrote things like the Chronicles of Narnia, which many of you at least heard about or caught the movie, that sold 100 million books. That's a lot of books. He would be a very wealthy man today. Every year, 2 million more books are sold every year by C.S. Lewis. And his influence on me, I have to tell you, has been enormous. A friend, when I was in seminary, handed me a book, The Weight of Glory, said, "You've got to read this guy." And I read it, and I loved it. And I read it again, read other books again, started reading it all the time. I want to know what he thinks, because he has a mind, he has an intellect, he has an imagination, and he has a clarity about the gospel that was staggering. My point is simply, a friend told a friend, C.S. Lewis, to come and see what the whole good news is about. And then C.S. Lewis becomes an instrument to begin to draw others. He influenced me with things that we all almost use as jargon around here. The scissors, the analogy of how God and we work together. And Lewis used to argue, please stop trying to figure out where God stops and you start, or where you stop and God starts. It's like trying to argue which blade of the scissors cuts through the paper. Leave it alone. The good news is God and us together do cut through the baloney. God and us together do see the change. God and us together, like the two blades of the scissors, make things happen. I love his biblical images of revelation and how biblical revelation is communicated as truth. Many of you have seen me do the box and then hold up the sheet of paper with the drawing of a box, 2 dimensions, 3 dimensions. That's C.S. Lewis. And what he's basically arguing is the truth and the vision and the power of the gospel is beyond our grasp. It's like if you were a 2-dimensional person, you had just a picture, stick figure, or a box, and then someone showed you an actual box, a 3-dimensional box. You'd go, wow, it is very similar, but it's so much more. And that is what he says about biblical revelation. What you read in the Scripture is accurate, it's true, but when you see it face to face, you're going to say, but it's so much more. It's the 3-dimensional box. It's not a drawing of a box on a 2-dimensional sheet of paper. Those images are Lewis images. Another one for me is the description of heaven, of what we will do there and what it'll be like. Don't want to go through all the things he's taught me, but he's taught me volumes. And my point would be again that he was brought to faith by a friend to friend evangelism, and talking and sharing and thinking and praying and walking through this. And that produced a huge number of things for people for 50 years since then. Through his writings, through his apologetics. Apologetics means I'm going to explain to you what this means. I do a lot of apologetics. And let me explain to you how it works, what it means, and how to understand it. And through his intellect and his imagination. Because Lewis knew how to connect the intellect and the imagination in a brilliant kind of way. I was reading an article about him this week or recently in Christianity Today, which is a pretty good magazine, and some of you probably take it. Read the article on Lewis, because what it does is it gave a beautiful image of how you can connect the imagination with the logic and the bare facts. And without the connection, sometimes we can see something going on and not understand. And whether you're talking about Jesus and his parables or his analogies or healing someone and saying, if by the finger of God I cast out this demon, then know that the kingdom of heaven has come upon you, make that connection. Jesus did this all the time. He connected this truth with the imagination and with images and with things that provided the meaning. What does it mean? How does it work? The article I was reading was used the analogy of someone that is not particularly bright, that works on cars, and as you begin to drive off and you ask the mechanic I want you to see if my tail lights are working. So you put the blinker on, and his answer is yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no. Now, the problem there is he's not getting the connection between the meaning of it and just the bare facts. We have so many people in our world today that want to just argue the bare facts, and they don't understand what it's all about, what the point is. And so they're like the less than brilliant mechanic. Yes, no, and that's what they do with all the specifics of the gospel. And Lewis was able to pull them all together in a way that I not only get the light, but I get the meaning. And he does it through his imagination. He was very intellectual, and he was very brilliant, but he knew how to connect. Not unlike St. Paul, who was very rational and very intellectual and able to speak several languages and connect with people all the way to Rome. He's influenced an enormous number of people. And not unlike also another guy that sort of stands out, Martin Luther. And I'm talking Martin Luther King. I'm talking Martin Luther in this particular example. Today is actually Martin Luther's birthday. He was born 530 years ago today. And wow, did that not change things? He was born in 1483, and his discovery of the good news began to really shape people. And he was influenced by a community, the Abbeys, and by reading and intellect, and by Bible study. And he was able to shape Germany and certainly the German Reformation and the Reformation beyond in an absolutely powerful way. And he would take the truth and he'd find a delivery system that would make it palatable and understandable. So rather than just telling you the things that are true, he would put it to music. One of the favorite tunes in Martin Luther's time was the tune to "A Mighty Fortress Is Our God." So what he did was write words to that tune, and we will sing it as we go out of this service today. But Luther wrote it, and it tells the truth, and it's communicated through music and art and imagination. I want us to understand how that affects us as well. He did it with translations of the Bible that not only informed theologically, but Luther's translation of the Bible helped shape the German language. So these guys not only came to know Jesus, they became huge instruments in sharing Jesus with others. And it may take a while, and it may take a time, but it's profoundly worth the doing. Luther's faith was shaped by all of these things: friends, community, study, prayer, Bible study, careful Bible study. And this, of course, is what I want us to do in this Mission Abbey. This is why so many people are in the small groups. 120-something are in small groups. And even though most of them have finished this last segment, Stu tells me another group, the men want to keep on, and I love it. But Bible study and immersing ourselves in the Scripture does help to shape us, and then we are effective in shaping others. And so this is how I think we can learn to help others begin to discover the truth. Here in Pawleys Island, 29585. Tell you another story. I don't know how many people here know who Kirsten Powers is, but she's on, a lot of things. She's a commentator, a Democratic commentator on Fox News, if you watch Fox News. If you like Newsweek, well, she's a columnist for Newsweek. If you don't like Newsweek and you just like to read, she's in USA Today, a contributor to USA Today. The point is, she's this young, intelligent, sharp lady. And she has been drawn into the dance from being an absolute atheist. Not only do I not believe it, I don't want to talk to people about it. I don't want to know about it, hear about it. I don't want to go and learn about it. I grew up in an Episcopal church, which she did, and I learned early on that, I don't even know what this is all about, but nobody ever taught me. We didn't do Bible studies. I don't think the rector knew himself. And so she just sort of moved on and left and went to great schools and became a writer for USA Today and Newsweek, contributor for Fox News, all that type of thing. Guess what, though? She had a boyfriend. And the boyfriend has some influence over people, at least the girlfriend. And so he asked her one night, do you have any faith in the Christian faith? No. Do you have any interest in the Christian faith? No. Well, I do. And he began to share his story. And he said, whereas I think our relationship is going somewhere, I would have to be married to someone that was a Christian. Will you at least have an open mind about this? And if you are a liberal, then, as Kirsten Powers is, the magic word, open mind, connected. And she said, of course I have an open mind. And so he said, well, then go to church with me this week. Whatever. So they went to this upscale Presbyterian church that she'd never really even thought about. It was Tim Keller's church. Some of you know who Tim Keller is. He's been helping to plant churches all over the United States. He works closely with the Anglican Mission in people, leaders, and church planting and the like. And so she went to Redeemer in New York City with her boyfriend, and when she was there, she was repulsed by the music, did not connect at all. In her old Episcopal church days, you would have had organ, and you would have had a certain feel that at least reminded her of her childhood. And he had sort of this blended thing of kind of upbeat stuff and then kind of what they called praise music. And she endured it. But then she heard him speak. And she found herself listening. And it was so logical and so rational and so clear, something that included the intellect and the imagination, that she was willing to go back again. And she continued to do this. This is where it gets dangerous. Until one day, the tumblers clicked. And she realized that this really did make sense. This really does add understanding to my life and who I am. I always wondered about it because otherwise normal people were Christian. But now I'm starting. So the trick here was not just friend brings friend, but boyfriend brings girlfriend, or someone that you have influence with, you bring, and they come and they hear and they learn. And the first thing you know, they start embracing it. And first thing you know, they might even find their toe tapping a little to some of that ridiculous music. And first thing they know, they might really want to go deeper and go further. And so now, Kirsten Powers is a serious Christian, and she's willing to witness to it. I just about dropped the magazine when I read her story because I thought, I don't even believe. No, you're sideways walking. And you literally are willing to stand up and stand apart for your Christian faith. It was a joy to me. My point is, there is a power in bringing someone to church. And I would think, as we begin to really sort out a place to be, other than 1.5 hours on Sunday afternoon, and find a site, then bringing someone to church where the musicians actually had some time to set up and learn and really get ready, and where everything sort of is settled and children's ministry is really going the way we want it to, and all the things that we have on our bench are operating, the Sunday morning experience, the children's ministry experience, the outreach ministry, the small groups, all those things are in operation, then we'll begin to say, wow, I could bring a friend to church. It would be worth the doing, and who knows? If the Lord can move and the Spirit can incline Kirsten Powers, then it's just possible that I have a friend that's not absolutely opposed, as Kirsten was, but at least not exactly excited, and maybe they would be willing to take a second look. Well, my vision for this Abbey is that we will understand the opportunity that God has given us. My vision for the Abbey is for us to understand that we have a shot at doing what God wants done that reflects the Great Commission and reflects what we read in the lessons today about one friend telling another friend, come and see. And we have a shot in this next chapter at reaching out to others, just as Philip reached out to Nathaniel, and Christians have reached out to Christians for generations, just as Tolkien reached out to C.S. Lewis. We have a shot at making a difference, but it will involve mission. That's what we think we do. Of course we care about nurture and being there for those that are already in the Abbey, the 160 people that signed the founder's document. Of course we want to be connected and be attentive to and care and bring connection and communication with that group that are our founders and others that come. But we always want to, in the corner of our eyes, see those that just aren't coming and don't get it and don't see it and don't understand it. And I want people to be able to see why we would use the language of an abbey, why something that was pulled up from over 1,000 years ago is important to me. It's largely why we use the language of an abbey, so I need to explain myself. It has also had some influence in the Anglican mission, because I believe that the Celtic model is a model that the Celtics were so effective in the 6th and 7th and 8th and 9th and 10th and 11th and 12th centuries at connecting with people, one friend bringing another friend, and setting up communities where you could actually walk in and step in and get connected and feel the presence of God and take the time and take the steps to go further and go deeper. This new church is going to be a church that really does seek to be a place that will embrace the full counsel of God. We don't fudge. We don't shave off the awkward edges. We embrace the full counsel of God. This church wants to be a church that engages both the reason and the imagination, like putting words to music and thinking with the power of art and the power of communicating through images and not just through rational discussion. We want to be a place that does recall at least the Celtic model, which has been so effective in doing just these things. And we want to be a place that actually expects to meet with God and to meet other people that have been captured by God and to work and grow and develop and reach out to become an increasingly effective platform for all of the things that our Lord has called us to do and to be. I want us to be like what you heard in the lessons. Philip telling Nathaniel, you got to see this. Come and see. I want us to do that. I want us to be a people that would write and tell a friend like Paul told Timothy. You need to be urgent. Preach the word. Do the work of an evangelist. You would think Timothy would know that. But what happens with age and time is we move from the energy and the excitement of doing the work of evangelism to saying, why don't we hire one? So what I think what we really need to hear is Paul had to write even Timothy and say, come on, buddy, what is happening here? You need to be urgent, in season and out, and you need to preach the word. You need to exhort, which is what I'm doing right now, and you need to do the work of an evangelist. And I want us to live into the collect that we started this service with. Clothe us with your spirit that we may bring those who do not know you to the knowledge and love of you through Jesus Christ. A prayer that we might do what we see in the lessons, that we might be instruments of creating an Abbey, a real Abbey, creating a way forward that's not your staid and traditional denominational model. No, but rather a new instrument and a new way forward for people that want to go deeper and go further. I'll have a video that I have for every prayer that will work. I don't understand how it works. It's on the webpage of our Anglican Mission. But I want you to listen to this, and if God wills, it will actually work. I've got Dustin. He's been working on it. And I want to close my comments by giving you a vision, a picture of what we're up to. And I'm going to ask, if you want to, Doug and Stu, for y'all to come and watch as well.